Hey guys, Naturally Creative Mama here, and today I want to show you how to make this wood sign. I used a reverse vinyl method for this sign and some chalk paint and just some wood that I had in the garage. So let's get started. So first I took this chalk paint that I had. It's just a light gray and a black acrylic paint that I had, both just in my craft closet. And I decided with the gray chalk paint it was a little bit too light for what I was wanting to do with this sign. So I added some of the black acrylic paint to it. I'm just using a foam brush here that's really inexpensive that I just had in my stash. And I'm just painting it here on my plywood. This is a 3/4 inch thick plywood that I just had in my garage, and it was just a scrap piece, so I cut it down to the length that I needed it to be for my sign and sanded it really well with my sander. Plywood can be a little rough sometimes, so you really want to make sure you sand the edge that you're going to be, the top that you're going to be painting, as well as the edges, just to get rid of all those splinters and stuff, because your foam brush could get stuck in the splinters, and obviously you don't want splinters yourself. So sand it really smooth, and here I'm just adding a little bit more paint. I needed a little more than I had. The best thing about chalk paint is that really it goes on so smoothly, and even mixing it with the acrylic paint, it was so smooth. One coat was really all it needed. I went back over a couple spots once I got to the end that just looked like they needed a little bit more paint on them, and that could be just because I was mixing the chalk paint and the acrylic paint together, plus because I did two different sets of paint where I mixed the two paints together. I wanted to make sure that my finished board was going to all be the same color. So I just lightly went back over the first part that I had painted just to make sure that it all matched, and kept, make sure you catch any drips that are coming down. And then I let that dry for a couple days because I just had some stuff going on and didn't get back to it for a couple days. But here I'm ready to get started on it again. You can see there that the wood grain actually shows through that chalk paint. That's one of the things about the plywood versus using a pine board. So I grabbed my vinyl lettering that I had just in my stash. When I was cleaning my office, I actually found it and thought, hey, I'm going to use this lettering for something. So I used the little squeegee that came with my lettering and just, rubbed that on really well to get it to stick to that transfer paper. And then just very carefully and slowly peel that transfer paper off to get the vinyl lettering to stick to it. It's a slow process, but you want to make sure that each little bit of your letters comes onto that transfer paper, because that's what's going to get it onto the wood. So this vinyl lettering I've actually had for a couple of years. I got it back when I did a craft workshop, a girls' night, and I had ordered it, and then it just kind of sat around and I never got to it. So found it when I was cleaning my office the other day and decided to just finally get to it. So now I'm going to take the vinyl lettering here and center it on my piece of wood as best I can. You can always mark your wood if you want with a pencil, because you can erase the pencil later, but I just kind of eyeballed it and got it centered. And then take the same little plastic squeegee, or you can use a credit card or a gift card, and just really smooth that lettering down on. You want to use good pressure to make sure that those letters really stick to your wood. And that's also why it's so important to make sure your paint is completely dry. Once you get those letters stuck, just carefully peel back that transfer paper. Again, if any of the vinyl gets stuck to the transfer paper as you're peeling it up, just go back over with the squeegee and push it down onto the wood. You want to go nice and slow. My video is sped up here, but I was really going slow. So that's how it looks with the vinyl on it. So once I had my vinyl lettering on there, I took it outside and used this paint and primer spray paint and just sprayed over the wood and the vinyl together. I put it on this, it was actually an old curtain, but I use it as a drop cloth, and put some scrap plywood to hold my drop cloth down, because outside I find when I spray paint things like this, my drop cloth tends to blow onto my project, so I use the plywood to just hold it down. One thing I found, you can see here on the board, that with the spray paint it leaves it a little blotchy, and I wasn't really happy with the way it was looking, so I ended up, once it had dried, just going over it with a small paint roller and some Swiss Coffee flat paint that I had in the garage. So you can see here, it looks so much better. It's really even, and you don't see any of those like stroke marks where the spray paint was. So I know some people really like to do the spray paint method, but I think I prefer just using a little roller. So I actually let it dry for about a day, and then went back to my little craft office workspace and started using my tool here to take the vinyl lettering off. You can use, if you have one of these tools, this is an old one from a Cricut machine set that I had years and years ago that I just kind of hung on to. But you can really use anything that's got like either a point or maybe some tweezers to just pull those letters up. You just want to be careful not to disturb the paint around where you're pulling the vinyl off, because then your design won't be quite as good. So I used the sharp tool and just kind of grabbing the edges of my vinyl lettering to pull it up off the sign. And sometimes it comes up really easy, some of them came out in pieces, but it went by really quickly actually. And this again is sped up for you guys so you don't have to see the whole thing, but it takes some time, but it's actually not too bad. So here I am, just almost to the end. The last couple letters here are coming off, and you can see how crisp those letters turned out with the vinyl on there. They're straight, and you don't see any bleed through or bleeding around the edges of where the vinyl was. That's the great thing about using the vinyl. So there you go. That's how it looks. So then I took it out to my garage, and I took some 80 grit sandpaper. Oh, there's my grumpy girl. I took some 80 grit sandpaper and just went around the edges of my sign. I wanted to rough them up a little bit and just make them look a little distressed. So just went around, and any of the like big areas on my sign between the wording where I had some space, I kind of did that, and around the corners, just so I could see that gray color shine kind of come through the paint a little bit. And then I switched to a 220 grit sandpaper and really lightly just sanded over the whole thing. And I concentrated on the actual lettering because where the vinyl got removed, the paint sticks up a little bit. So I wanted to smooth that out with the sandpaper just to make it so that it looked a little more like it had been there forever rather than just newly painted. So I did that and then just brushed off all my dust with a dry rag. And here's how it looks after I had sanded it with that 220 grit sandpaper. You can see the difference it made. I love the way that this gray chalk paint and black craft paint together really looked on this sign. It wasn't super dark, which is what I wanted because I'm going to put it in my boys' room, and their walls are kind of a light blue gray, so this color works out really well. So there you have it. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do, and make sure to like this video. I'll see you next time.